The little girl Valkyrie, young Gun, was suddenly blocked by a group of 7 gods because she accidentally overheard their conversation. Fortunately, Jack Ripper appeared in time and stopped the 7 gods before they could harm Gun, to avoid indiscriminate killing. So the 7 gods left immediately afterwards and did not forget to warn Gun not to tell anyone about their conversation. Gun breathed a sigh of relief when she escaped from the fierce 7 gods, whom she teasingly called the 7 fierce gods. However, Jack Ripper, with his special eyes, said that although there were 7 of them, they were actually 1. Gun then looked at Jack's hands full of wounds and currently bandaged, and suddenly remembered his fight with Hercules. She worriedly said that Jack was seriously injured and should rest for a while. As a result, Gun later refused Jack's invitation to have tea and hurriedly took a bunch of medicine from the cabinet and ran to give it to Bullheader. Jack stood silently looking at his cup of tea, then let out a sentence: "It's a pity that at this moment in the Vala arena, the next match has been played by the gods. There are now 3 wins and only 2 for humanity. Humanity is now gradually moving towards their extinction." Hemi was holding the 2 and Galahorn in his hand and began to introduce the next representative of the gods. This is the man who once saved humanity from worldly desires. He is also the one who shows the way and leads humanity out of the dark night. He is the most arrogant son in the world, who makes all humanity respect and call him Buddha. Hearing Buddha's name being called on behalf of humanity, everyone immediately panicked. However, before everyone could calm down, Buddha suddenly ignored Hemida and walked straight through the opposite door. The gods were amused by Buddha's arrogant attitude and willingness to do as he pleased and speculated that he must be approaching to take a closer look at those wet humans. However, Buddha suddenly stopped in front of the entrance to the arena of the representative for humanity and stood with his back to it. He grabbed Hemida's 2 and Galahorn and spoke up, testing mic, "Hello 1, 2, 3, 4, hello. I will represent humanity in this match. Does everyone understand?" Immediately, the entire hall exploded, and the angry gods stood up and shouted, "Are you crazy? Buddha is originally a god, how dare you speak arrogantly like that?" However, Buddha didn't care about those things, directly crushing Hemida's 2 and Galahorn with one hand, making the MC regretful. Buddha then took a deep breath, glared at the gods sitting in the stands and spoke softly but extremely still-like, "Too noisy, withdraw my words." He pointed his head at the fallen gods sitting on the stands and declared in a green voice, "If the gods no longer want to save humanity, then I will save them. And if any god dares to stand in my way, I will not spare them." The entire hall was now plunged into a terrifying silence because of Buddha's bold declaration. Gods like Aest Handmaid, Loki or Odin could not hide their murderous aura and anger. The little girl Valkyrie, young Gun, was also very surprised to see this result and turned to ask her sister Brunhild standing next to her. Brunhild explained that the man standing in front of us was unfortunately someone who would not listen to anyone. Half an hour ago in the past, Buddha was walking while eating popcorn when he suddenly noticed Bullheld coming out of the prayer temple. He teased her by saying tears don't suit a beauty like Bullheld. Buddha then said that Zeus had asked him to fight for him in the 6th match. However, he chose to fight for humanity. However, Brunhild's reaction was extremely cold, causing Buddha to fall backwards. He asked Brunhild if this had been part of her plan all along, hadn't it? Because Brunhild had come to see Buddha before even the council meeting announcing Jakarok's organization took place. Was it that she had already plotted for him to fight against the gods from then on? Brunhild remained cold-faced and said that Buddha should abandon that thought. However, in Valar, she believed that no one hated the gods as much as Buddha. Buddha laughed and, before leaving, whispered a warning to Brunhild that he didn't like the way she used all means to achieve victory for herself. Back in the present, Hemida said he couldn't let Buddha switch sides and fight for humanity. However, Zeus stepped forward and said that in the past 10 years, Article 26 of the Valar Constitution did not regulate the ability of gladiators to switch sides between the two sides. He was also very interested in this new development. Zeus then glared at Buddha to respond. Buddha also exuded a stream of pressure, intimidating Zeus and declaring that he was not afraid to fight this old man. Odin, who had been silent for a while, finally spoke up to question Buddha. Is your family ready to make enemies with all the gods here? Buddha heard this and complained, oh my God, it's so annoying. Do you remember what I said? Whether it's an ally or an enemy, good or bad, God or human, it doesn't matter, because why? Because in this universe, only I am important. Hearing such an arrogant statement, the gods immediately shouted and demanded an account with Buddha. Buddha didn't care about those angry words and asked Crush who his opponent was. Crush laughed mockingly and said that the gladiator in the 6th match had already been arranged by him. Then from above the Valhalla hall, black clouds suddenly rushed in and heavenly words were continuously echoed throughout the sky. A giant flying ship appeared carrying 7 gods of fortune. It slowly landed. Then all 7 gods of fortune stood in front of Buddha. Zeus approached and patted Bisa on the shoulder, then told him to fight his best. Hemida was embarrassed because there were 7 gladiators here. He said, I can't let all 7 people compete together. However, Bisa explained that they were not 7 but 1 person. He flexed his muscles to break his armor and the other 7 gods of fortune jumped into Bisa body one by one and merged. It is said that in Japanese culture, there are 7 gods who govern the fate of the world. However, some say that there is another god besides the 7. This god is the legend of Shichifukujin. A cocoon gradually appeared and from within the cocoon, the disaster god ZEROFEKU broke the cocoon and crawled out. ZEROFEKU threw off the mask on his face and pointed his finger straight at his face. Buddha declared that he would kill him. However, facing Jufuku's madness, Buddha just silently looked at him as if looking at a childish boy. ZEROFEKU was angry at being ignored and pulled out a huge axe from his body. Indeed, slaughter is still the best, Handmaid smiled and said, this is the god who turns disaster into fortune in legend. This 6th match will surely be a match full of hatred. Hemida suddenly received a notification from his phone and announced that the representative from the gods this time was ZEROFEKU, and let the match begin. Paul Hyde explained to Gun that Shichifukujin was just ZEROFEKU's temporary form in the past. Zeus was originally a good god who specialized in distributing fortune. However, for some unknown reason, he degenerated and became a disaster god, like in ancient Asia when gods and humans still lived close to each other. There were some gods who lived among humans to protect them. One of them was the lucky god ZEROFEKU. ZEROFEKU was originally a kind god who specialized in distributing fortune to those who were unlucky. Since ZEROFEKU descended from heaven, all he saw was humanity being covered by 8 sufferings and endless misery. Seeing this scene, ZEROFEKU cried, "What can I do to help them escape this painful suffering? Here it is, if something causes them to suffer this misery, I will remove the source of their misery from them." He then directly sucked disease out of people, a boy with a birthmark on his face. The boy then no longer had chest pain and bowed down with his mother to thank God ZEROFEKU. The way of salvation that ZEROFEKU discovered was to absorb humanity's misery and keep it for himself because he considered his mission to bring happiness to those who were suffering. ZEROFEKU continued to absorb all the misery he could, and after many years of constantly absorbing humanity's misery, he gradually became physically and mentally disabled. Bringing happiness to humanity was what made ZEROFEKU happy. For that reason, even though he had to endure pain, he never complained. ZEROFEKU staggered and went to the village of yesteryear to meet the villagers again to see if their fate had changed. However, naive ZEROFEKU did not know the true nature of humans. The more misery is erased, the more they forget what true happiness is and fall into depravity. ZEROFEKU suddenly got pushed by a young man and lay sprawled on the ground. He recognized that young man with a birthmark on his face as the sickly boy he had once saved. ZEROFEKU happily asked, "You must be living very happily now because you no longer feel miserable, right?" However, in response to this friendly inquiry, the young man drove ZEROFEKU away and spat on him. ZEROFEKU was shocked because this was not the happiness he wanted to give humanity. The anger in ZEROFEKU began to grow when suddenly a stream of people followed by all kinds of animals led by Buddha were following each other through the village. Goku realized that although these people looked emaciated and poor, their faces were filled with the radiant smile of happiness and contentment. ZEROFEKU got up and ran over, throwing away the bowl of beans in Buddha's hand, then asking him, "Why is it that even though you have tried to absorb humanity's misery, they still haven't achieved true happiness?" Buddha just smiled, flicked a remaining bean on his hand, put it in his mouth and said, "Happiness is not something given by others. Happiness comes from within oneself and is something achieved by one's own strength." Hearing this philosophy, Zeus stood dumbfounded and didn't understand anything. Buddha turned around and continued, "Where there is darkness, there will be light. If you want to seek happiness, then bear the burden commensurate with that desire. That is the consciousness that gives birth to the joy of life and is the darkness that will ultimately create happiness." The villagers who had been absorbed by Zeus' misery seemed to awaken to a new truth and gathered around Buddha, calling him Buddha. Only ZEROFEKU still couldn't accept this and ran into the forest with 2 rows of tears. He was jealous of Buddha and thought that position should have been his role. It is said that the love of gods can also easily turn into hatred, and from then on they have repeatedly tried to destroy humanity. ZEROFEKU was no exception. He was corrupted and turned into an evil version. A group of people went into the forest to pick mushrooms and accidentally encountered ZEROFEKU. He discovered them and turned around to fly straight to kill these people. However, ZEROFEKU's kind nature stopped him in time, and ZEROFEKU split his evil self into 7 gods of fortune, thus giving birth to the legend of Shichifukujin. Back in the present, ZEROFEKU held a huge axe in his hand and blamed Buddha for making him a laughingstock and deserving of heavenly punishment. However, Buddha directly kicked ZEROFEKU in the stomach and asked in a green voice, "Sorry, but who are you?" ZEROFEKU was angry, holding his stomach in pain. "What did I do to deserve this pain? It's really pitiful for this fate." He held the axe while twitching his muscles and flesh, then chopped it straight down on Buddha's head as if he had dodged it and backed away. ZEROFEKU continuously swung his axe to attack, but time after time, Buddha dodged ZEROFEKU's attacks. The axe suddenly grew eyes and grew bigger and bigger. Zeus also just returned to his seat and explained, "ZEROFEKU's weapon has the ability to absorb misery. The more it absorbs, the bigger it gets and the greater its destructive power. It is called Jimanbanasha." ZEROFEKU ran over and chopped down on Buddha's head. Brunhild explained, "Every time ZEROFEKU misses, it's a misfortune, and if the opponent deliberately dodges, his attack will grow stronger over time." However, Buddha still dodged very gracefully and didn't care how long ZEROFEKU's weapon was. Brunhild reminded Gun, "Pay attention to Buddha's movements. He dodged before the opponent attacked." However, unlike Chizo who dodged based on experience and Adam who dodged based on analysis and copying, Buddha was using an ability similar to prophecy, also known as mindfulness, or again polynomial. Every attack of ZEROFEKU became useless as Buddha continued to dodge, and the number of times Buddha dodged and beat ZEROFEKU increased over time. ZEROFEKU became more and more miserable, and finally his axe became huge, making it impossible for Buddha to dodge. He realized that the range of his opponent's attack had become too large and probably useless, so he decided to stand still facing it. Buddha held his staff and used his ultimate move, Six Paths Reincarnation. ZEROFEKU's huge axe collapsed, shattering the arena in front of him. However, it was slowly pushed up by the Six Paths staff. Buddha stood behind the shield and smiled teasingly at ZEROFEKU. Don't worry, because he will have a way to cure his rebellious adolescence. Buddha explained to Gun what had just happened. In Buddhist tradition, there are 6 realms in which humans reincarnate, called the 6 paths. Each path will have a guardian deity, and the power of these 6 guardian deities resides in the 6 path staff. It can change shape to respond to Buddha's emotions. Flexing its muscles and throwing ZEROFEKU's axe back, he became angry and changed its shape, causing the axe to sprout countless sharp blades. Seeing this, Buddha also transformed his staff into a different shape to defend against ZEROFEKU's attack. He nodded, then held his weapon, then flew straight towards ZEROFEKU and slid down to dodge his attack while approaching ZEROFEKU and kicking him in the stomach. Back in the past, when he was born as Siddhartha Gautama, prince of the small kingdom of Sakya in ancient northern India, he belonged to the highest class of Kshatriya. Siddhartha lacked nothing: highest status, finest clothes, best food, luxurious residence, best education. Siddhartha was also extremely benevolent when he often organized food distribution sessions and visited people in the kingdom with care. For him, bringing happiness to people was the real duty of royalty. One day, while watching a bird flying high in the sky, Siddhartha had just thought it was free when the bird was killed by another larger one. This scene deeply imprinted in his mind and made him unable to hide his surprise. Some time later, Siddhartha had the opportunity to visit the king of the kingdom of Mala, named Chakata, who was his cousin. Siddhartha said to Chakata, "You must be very happy to be the king of a prosperous kingdom like Marlane." However, Chakata denied this and said, "I will soon die of illness," and wondered who he had lived for since birth. He wondered what fried beans tasted like to people, and where the river he saw flowed to, and how vast this sky was. Hearing this story, Siddhartha was shocked to think that Chakata had been truly happy all this time. In the end, Chakata died on his way to visit his cousin. Siddhartha thought about Chakata's question for a long time: was he really happy, and who was he living for? At that moment, he was enlightened. Siddhartha then dismounted and laughed happily, then walked straight to the Mala palace, where he pushed open the door while throwing flowers in front of everyone's astonishment. Siddhartha lifted Chakata's coffin with one hand and took it outside despite his father's scolding. Siddhartha then released Chakata's coffin on the river and told his brother, "Please discover for yourself where it flows." The next day, he also left his kingdom and began his solitary journey. Along the way, Siddhartha recruited many disciples into his sect. Everything this man did was to fight against the fate that had been predetermined for him. Whether they were human or God or anyone who imposed fate on others, Buddha hated them. In other words, Buddha was the most rebellious young man at the height of rebellion. ZEROFEKU once again transformed his weapon to counter Buddha. Also transforming his staff into heavenly Tao, Buddha and ZEROFEKU then continuously attacked each other directly with their ability to see into the future. Buddha seemed to have a greater advantage over his opponent. His cross-cutting blow, as fast as lightning, slashed a wound across his chest, making ZEROFEKU even more angry. He created a stormy battle with countless sharp hooks flying towards Buddha. He smiled with praise for ZEROFEKU's adolescence and transformed into human world Tao, diamond poisonous bone sword. Then he fought while cutting off the chains. Finally, Buddha overcame the stormy battle and confronted ZEROFEKU. Buddha dodged ZEROFEKU's attack and smiled, advising him, "Love yourself." Seeing the halo shining behind Buddha, ZEROFEKU was enlightened. His stormy axe also gradually disappeared and ZEROFEKU dropped it without knowing when. Seeing this, Buddha threw his staff down and offered a one-on-one match with ZEROFEKU. At this point, ZEROFEKU also realized that he had never been jealous of Buddha, but actually wanted to be like him. The two of them discarded the shell that separated them into gods and humans, and they fought a life-and-death match with each other. ZEROFEKU felt extremely happy at this moment, even though he was later knocked out by Buddha, but the smile still remained on his lips. ZEROFEKU was finally moved and regained his original kind nature. He promised Buddha that from now on, he would love himself and believe in what he wanted to do and the people he wanted to be happy. Suddenly, the two horns that had fallen off earlier were firmly attached to ZEROFEKU's forehead. They grew longer and burrowed into his mouth and chest, then turned into a pair of dragons flying out. They twisted in the sky, then entered ZEROFEKU's body before Buddha could save him. A wave surged and the two dragons disappeared, leaving a dragon egg in front of Buddha. From inside the egg, a giant monster crawled out, causing Buddha to retreat in horror. This monster is the sixth heaven, Demon King Papias. In legend, gods and humans were all astonished at this moment because they didn't understand what was happening. Even Brunhild didn't know how a monster like Papias could appear in the match. Ragnarok at this moment was very curious whether that monster was a god or not handmade. It seems that there is no information about this guy. Suddenly, Hades, king of the underworld, appeared and asked us to move elsewhere because that was his seat. He approached Hades and asked if his brother knew anything about this monster. No, Hades explained that Papias was originally a legend in Helheim where he ruled, and Papias was a legend within a legend who had once destroyed half of Helheim. Even Hades, king of Helheim, had never seen his face. Hades wondered why a god of Valhalla had become the legendary Papias. From Papias' right arm grew a large blade. He said that he was not yet used to this body, so it was very likely that everything would end sooner than expected. Withdrawing Papias' words, he struck down on Buddha's head as if he had dodged both of them, continuously exchanging moves at an amazing speed. However, Ballhelder realized that Buddha might not be able to see the future. That's because Buddha's mindfulness is precisely seeing the light of the soul. However, for a sixth heaven demon king like Papias, there is absolutely no light emanating from his soul. This also means that Buddha cannot see the future. Papias transformed his right arm into a drill and flew straight towards Buddha. He again transformed Six Paths Reincarnation, erected a shield to block this powerful attack. However, Papias' drill pierced through Buddha's shield and cut off his left eye. Papias transformed his right arm into an axe and continuously chopped down on Buddha's head like a skyfall, forcing him to defend against the wounds that gradually appeared on Buddha's body, causing everyone in the Valhalla arena, including humans and gods, to hide their horror. Hades explained that Papias' power was not something that any normal god could match because he was once a monster that destroyed half of Helheim. That happened a long time ago before Hades took over Helheim. After destroying half of this place, Papias suddenly disappeared. Someone accidentally got a piece of Papias' cell and brought it back to nurture it, implanted it and attached it to ZEROFEKU. The only one capable of doing this according to Hades is Beliaba. Back to the match, Papias just added another hook to Buddha's right leg, causing him to grimace in pain. The human side became more and more panicked because they thought Buddha could not defeat the evil demon king. Buddha asked if ZEROFEKU was still somewhere in Papias. However, he mocked and said that he had swallowed that third-rate god into his stomach long ago. Buddha was angry and transformed the Six Paths staff into its fifth form, the demon-slaying heavenly hand guardian staff. The Six Paths staff, based on the toxic hatred that Buddha had eliminated, turned into a shape that had never been seen before, which was the wild god war sword. Barbizat declared that it was a blasphemy for a lowly person like Buddha to dare to oppose a supreme demon like him, and he would teach him a lesson. Lying, Papias flew to attack Buddha. Buddha swung his sickle and chopped across Papias' head, but he blocked it with his arm blade. Papias brushed off Buddha's attack and prepared to attack him. Buddha turned around and continued to strike, but in a surprise situation, Papias blocked the deadly blow with his left hand and pierced Buddha's stomach with his arm blade. Buddha smiled close to Papias and repeated his words, "If the gods do not save, then I will save." And whoever dares to stand in the way will be killed without mercy. Demon King Papias was angry, kicked Buddha aside and looked at his slashed arm. Despite being stabbed in the stomach, Buddha still swung his sickle. This made Papias extremely confused and began to fear. However, he still spoke out loud that he was not afraid of Buddha. He said that he had found fertile land here, so everything was different from when he was in Helheim. At that time, Papias' body could not withstand his own supernatural power and disintegrated. But now everything is different. Buddha flicked his hand and said that Papias was weaker than even ZEROFEKU. Many demon kings were angry and approached and continuously attacked Buddha like a storm. Hades also realized that at this moment, the monster of Helheim was unusually scared. Papias tried to calm himself down, tore off his left arm and took out a sword, then attacked first, confronting Buddha's karma-destroying reincarnation. In a moment later, Buddha's sickle was broken and returned to the staff. Papias added another blow, completely destroying Buddha's six-path staff. Buddha was thrown far away and lay motionless on the arena. At this moment, Buddha suddenly saw a faint light beside him. He laughed happily, then stood up with his long hair fluttering in the wind, looking extremely romantic. However, what caught everyone's attention was ZEROFEKU's stormy axe that Buddha was holding in his hand. Buddha then proceeded to refine his spirit weapon right in front of everyone. The stormy axe in his hand had now absorbed Buddha's love and the power of the first lotus birth, transforming it into a new divine weapon called the Great Round Silent Sword Spirit. The two then rushed towards each other and fought a life and death match, hoping that Buddha would win. Humanity cheered with all their might. Papias at this moment did not understand why Buddha, who was almost exhausted and about to die, was not afraid at all. On the contrary, he still dared to fight him until this moment. Buddha swung a blow that pierced Demon King Papias' chest, causing him to scream in pain. The Demon King, Papizat, swung a blow down on Buddha's head, forcing him to block the attack. Buddha, in an effort to turn the situation around, succeeded in the match. Cutting another crosswise wound across Papias' chest, Buddha no longer needed to block because he had regained his mindfulness and used it to dodge. That was because the fear in Papias had allowed Buddha to see the light from his soul. Papias chopped down to cut Buddha in half, but it was just an illusion. He circled behind and raised his great round silent sword spirit high, then together with ZEROFEKU he struck out with his divine eye of enlightenment and nirvana beheading, ending the evil Demon King. All humanity cheered with joy when they saw the sixth heaven Demon King lying dead. The Demon King tried to use his last strength to pull Buddha with him, but before he could do anything he disappeared. Buddha turned around and looked up at the sky and saw ZEROFEKU smiling radiantly. Goodbye, he flew into the sky with others. The sixth match of Ragnarok finally ended with Buddha's victory, countless cheers. Buddha's name was echoed throughout the arena. The door with the word humanity slowly opened and welcomed the winner. Buddha then entered and collapsed in front of Bull Huda and Gold. He was then taken away by the heavenly maidens for treatment, but did not forget to tease Bull Huda. Meanwhile, in a mysterious place, Odin found Bildiber and threatened him, "It's best not to interfere in the match you've longed for." Meanwhile, Zeus and other Greek gods were watching the tied score. At this point, they realized that in the next match, they must be the winner. Hades crushed his mask and also declared that he would be the one to go into battle next. Bull Huda has also chosen a representative fighter for the human side in the 7th round. He is the man known as the first king of China. At this moment, in the corridor of Valhalla Arena, walls were constantly being broken by a man. As he walked, he only stopped after clearing a path to the corridor and raised his hand and spoke arrogantly, "Wherever I go, that will be the way."